we bonded over a specific big forever changed moment. And I think what we realized through that conversation was that it is a unique point of connection to say everyone, no matter where you are or where you're from, has had a forever changed moment, at least one. So there are many forever changed moments, and we sometimes don't take the time to recognize and reflect and think, wow, that I'm a different person as a result of that conversation or that occurrence or that celebration or that loss or whatever that is. I'm actually different walking away from that than I was walking into it. And so we started to kind of connect on that and think, okay, well, we're not the only ones. Surely we're not the only ones with stories of forever changed. And what might we do with that?
Well, today is a really big day.
Huge.
It is the first podcast of Forever Changed.
I am so grateful that we have reached this moment and so surprised in some ways, right? Because this is 2 years in the making, 2 years in the imagining.
2 years in the imagining.
And today we're actually making.
Yeah. And Linda, you've just arrived to Belfast from Arizona.
Yes. Yeah. It was gratefully a really lovely set of flights and transportation moments that brought me to a very surprisingly sunny Belfast yesterday morning. I was very excited to see the sun.
Well, brilliant. Welcome to Belfast, and we're excited to get going with our first podcast, Forever Changed. Before we dive into that, Linda, tell us a bit about you. Who are you, and what on earth are you doing in conversation with me?
Well, I am bound to have a lot of fun in conversation with you. As you well know, we met as a result of our shared passion for coaching leaders, and specifically coaching leaders in transition, although we do that in slightly different lenses. It was almost 2 years ago, right? It was January of 23 that we came together, and this concept first emerged of Forever Changed. And over a 2-year period, we had Zoom calls and WhatsApp messages and until we, kind of finally arrived at this moment. But what I do is coach leaders in transition. Typically, I'm working with executives who have taken on their biggest job yet and trying to navigate what happens next in these big new roles where their stakeholder map has changed and the stakes are often higher than they've maybe faced before, and having someone to kind of walk alongside them in those moments can be really useful. So there's a lot of joy that comes from seeking possibility with leaders across a wide range of organizations. I often work with physician leaders and scientist leaders who kind of do possibility for a living, but in a very different way than often unfolds from the leadership chair. So it's fun to bring those two things together.
That's lovely to hear. I'm really curious to know, coaches use, I'm really curious to know a lot. So
Right.
it'll probably come up a lot in our podcast. But I'm curious to know how you discovered coaching in the first place, because, children don't say, when I grow up, I want to be a leadership coach working with people in transition. It's not something that really is in your head.
Yeah.
So how on earth did you come to be a coach?
Right. Well, a wildly varied path for sure. Very early in my career, I thought, someday I want to be leading and managing teams. And then I went to my first, kind of workshop aimed at teaching people to supervise and manage and lead and all those kinds of things. And I'm like, no, actually what I want to do is teach people how to lead, right? But I'm a very experiential learner. So I decided, okay, first I have to take on some roles that involve management and leadership. And then I can start to, think about taking that into a classroom setting and those kinds of things. And then along the way, coaching as a leader myself, coaching my teams, assembling teams for performing in across a wide range of fast-paced organizations really piqued my interest. And what I really loved, as much as I loved the team thing and leading wide ranges of teams, the passion really started to emerge in those one-on-one conversations
Yeah.
where people were like, I didn't think I could, I didn't know I could, and then, well, let's experiment. Let's throw some experiments out there and come back a couple of weeks later and see that they, what they learned and how they accomplished, what they accomplished and what they're going to do next. Just kind of that continuous um, pursuit of what can be, what's possible, really is what solidified for me over time as I want to spend all my time doing that, working with people one on one from a coaching standpoint. So that's kind of where that emerged for me. Tell me where that emerged for you.
Yeah, I have maybe a quite a different journey into coaching to you. Um, I probably was a coach before I knew coaching was a thing.
Right, right.
I'm the eldest of four kids, and growing up in quite a working class area of Belfast, I was really like high responsibility, high importance of community, and I was a helper. I was always helping members of our community, and I was the first girl in my family to go to a grammar school and have a grammar school education, and so I was considered the bright one or the academic one. And so when people around about our area needed to write letters to the housing association or the housing executive, they would come to me to
Mm-hmm.
write their letters for them and to apply for jobs and do CVs and fill in job applications. So I kind of became that person. And I suppose I was a bit of a career coach even in my teens.
Oh,
When I look back on it, I think that's where my love of supporting people and walking alongside people really started from. But it wasn't until many years later when I was living abroad in an expat community and I came across lots of people who were uh, not really fulfilled in their day to day lives and wanted more for themselves, wanted more for their families. And I remember this one woman that I got to know, and she had previously been a photographer, and she really wanted to get back into photography. She was bored being a spouse. Her husband worked a very long hours and um difficult shift patterns. And so I said, "Oh, sure, come round to my house for
yeah.
coffee. We'll have a chat. We'll explore what's possible." And like you said, when you use that phrase, walk alongside someone, I really walked alongside her for a number of months, helping her figure out what she might want to do and how she could fit it in with being a mom and a wife and all the responsibilities that were on her. And at the end of our meetings for coffee over a number of weeks, she said, "Lisa, thank you so much for the coaching." And she took out her wallet and paid me. And that was the light bulb moment for me, Linda, when I discovered coaching
Love it.
was what I was actually doing. And I immediately went on to Google and searched up what is coaching. And that led me on a completely different career trajectory. I started to learn more about coaching. I was really curious about the science of coaching. I wanted to know, does this stuff work? And if it does, how can I get better at it? And that led me to find out about the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. And it was through the Institute of Coaching that you and I first met in
Right.
Rotterdam a few years ago and started a conversation that came about around a word or a phrase, really, I guess, a phrase that we used in conversation that seemed to ignite something in us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that
I do.
encounter?
I absolutely remember it. We were midway through the first day of that. conference discussion group, really, that we joined, as you mentioned, in Rotterdam, and we hadn't interacted yet, and it was like it was after lunch or maybe after the first break or whatever, and you know, came walking in bright and sunny, as your demeanor often is, and you know, you took the time to stop and say, "So how is your day going?" And you actually wanted an answer to the question. It wasn't like, "Hey, how you doing?" And, you know, just kind of keep walking. And so that really, you know, just kind of sparked our initial conversation. And we started to kind of talk about, well, why are you here and why now? And what brings you to Rotterdam? And we'd both traveled a good distance to get there and things like that. And we started this exchange of stories that had been recent for us, right? And when we kind of bonded over recent loss, recent stories of loss, very different
Mhm.
experiences, very different stories of loss, but we kind of initially bonded over that. And there was a moment where we were both had kind of both shared our moment, right? Or our stories of loss. And we were both really reflective and maybe silent. Hard to believe that we were silent, but we actually were silent
True.
for a few moments. And at the same time, we both uttered the same phrase, right? Forever changed. And that
That's right.
really is the beginning of what brought us here today. And really, it was like 2 years of kind of talking about like, wow, because I got goosebumps. I remember when we both said that at the same time. And we're like, okay, well, this means something. We don't know what it means yet, but we were willing to explore it and take the time to explore it. And we had Zoom calls and hikes and, you know, met up in a couple of different places to kind of think, well, what are you thinking now? And what are you thinking now? And that led to, I don't know, there's something about forever changed. We think, you know, we bonded over a specific big forever changed moment. And I think what we realized through that conversation was that it is a connection, a point of connection
Mm.
for, I think, humans, right? And a uniquely, you know, a unique point of connection to say everyone, no matter where you are or where you're from, has had a forever changed moment, at least one, right? And often we think it's this big bang. I walked out a completely different person, but often it's more incremental than that.
That's right. Yeah.
And, you know, so there are many forever changed moments, and we sometimes don't take the time to recognize and reflect and think, wow, that I'm a different person as a result of that conversation or that occurrence or that celebration or that loss or whatever that is. I'm actually different walking away from that than I was walking into it. And so we started to kind of connect on that and think, okay, well, we're not the only ones. Surely we're not the only ones with stories of forever changed. And what might we do with that?
I think that's what's really exciting about making a new connection. When you connect with someone on a really personal way through story,
Yeah,
which is how we're neurobiologically wired to connect, aren't
yeah,
we? And we connected through story and through being willing to open up to each other in such a short time
yeah,
and share of our loss. You recently lost your mom, and I'd recently lost my late husband, John. And we had this deep and really powerful, impactful conversation
yeah,
around loss and grief and bereavement and what was showing up for each of us in that season of our lives.
yeah.
And we didn't just leave it there. What do
Right.
you think that was that caused us to stay connected over that
Mm.
and want to do something with our shared forever changed experience?
Yeah. You know, I'm not sure I can pinpoint one thing. Can you?
No, I think there was something there though that made us think we could do something
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
That that there was maybe um maybe maybe something worth exploring, not just with each other,
Yeah.
but with other people as well. Because we are coaches, we are naturally curious.
Yeah.
We do hear people's stories, and we have that privilege all the time to
Yeah.
hear people's stories. And there was something I think we thought, could this be of interest to other people?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it an avenue to kind of spread that sense of connection, right? Because I think while I can't pinpoint a specific thing, I think there was a shared sense in our conversation that the particular forever changed moments that we shared with each other in that conversation kind of sparked a desire, a deep rooted almost responsibility, right? To do something with it, right? Because we get to be here, right? We get to be here. We get to do this work. We were brought together for a reason, or we wouldn't have had that conversation, right? So let's see where it leads. Because too often I think we make a quick connection and then we move on. Or we make kind of had a sense of connection, but we're busy. And so we move on. And so I think in this moment, it was an opportunity to say, okay, that was a pretty powerful moment of connection. I wonder what else could happen, right? I wonder where that could lead. And we should probably do something with that, and not in a should heaviness kind of way, but no, this was presented, this opportunity was presented to us. So
Yeah, I think that's a
where
brilliant
can
way
it
of
lead?
looking at it because we have like met up in Boston
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
You and your husband came to visit us here
Yeah.
in Northern Ireland, and we hiked together. We
Yes.
did the Causeway Coast together. So we actually invested in the
Yeah.
relationship, and it's made me think about how many times in life you meet people and then they just pass through your life. But there was definitely something about that connection that we had
Yeah.
that motivated us to invest in the relationship, to make the effort to meet up. And here
Yeah.
you are in Belfast, um, having traveled
I
over
know.
from the US to be here to
Right.
record this podcast from an idea and an encounter that we had a number of years ago,
Yeah.
which is
That could have
really,
easily just been a moment and we moved on, right? But we kind of grasped it and thought,
and
let's
here we
let's
are, and
do
we
it.
have a series of really interesting conversations coming up about other people's forever change
Yes.
moments, but we also wanted to share our own
Yeah.
forever change moments.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear more about the one that you would like to share today, Linda, because we've talked about lots of moments that have
Yeah.
impacted us in our
Yeah.
lives as we've got to know each other over the last few years. Is there one particular one that you want to talk about that really has impacted you in a
Yeah.
significant way?
Yeah, there is. I uh feel really blessed that there have been a few forever changed moments, right? To reflect on. But this one kind of I decided on this one because in coaching in general, in our friendship and collaboration, um, we talk a lot about the power of possibility, right? And I started to think, okay, well, where did that come from for me, right? Like, what makes that so poignant, or what makes me kind of want to hang my hat on that. And so in reflection, I mean, I think in some ways I'm just kind of wired that way. I'm wired for possibility, I can turn pretty much any phrase into, a positive, right? Kind of thing, of where it could lead. But if I really think about that first moment that I noticed that, that sense of possibility and wanting to hang out in that space, for from a career standpoint, was very early in my career. And it served as a kind of like a seismic shift moment for me at a pretty formative age that then impacted not only, certainly my career path and what I chose to do for a living, but how I thought about being a parent and how I thought about, being a spouse and a friend and a family member and, kind of overall acceptance of being a flawed human who's trying to, just kind of figure this stuff out along the way. So it came through to me through the benefit of a workshop that I attended very early on in my career. It was my first, professional job out of college, and I had expressed an interest, at some point in time in kind of wanting to follow a management track. So I got selected to go to this workshop, and the instructor was, humorous and irreverent, and all kinds of things that were very very engaging. But the topic was one that I had not been introduced to before, and it invited the concept and the actual physically, and mentally and emotionally playing out of um, the power of a mindset shift, and to really challenge the beliefs that I kind of had grown up with, and kind of put them out there to say, is that really the only way to think about these things? So the content was transactional analysis, which is, approach to psychotherapy, um, developed in the 50s by Eric Berne, and really presented us with a way of understanding how we communicate with others, of identifying what they might be bringing to the table and communicating with us, and that we actually kind of, it's a big puzzle piece, right? And by virtue of how we see ourselves in that moment, we can kind of play with the conversation, with the mindset, and really come out very differently on the other side. So for anybody else, it would have been just a workshop, an interesting workshop on communication. But for me, it was a seismic shift on what I believed coming in was different than what I believed coming out. And I thought, wow, how can I recreate some of those things? So what I believed going in, which I didn't realize until going into this workshop, is that possibilities were limited, and that that possibility was constrained in some way. And what I understood coming out of it is that possibility abounds. Possibility is unlimited once we give ourselves kind of permission to move beyond, constraint. It was the first time I was introduced to that concept of, stimulus response, stimulus react, kind of piece that we use a lot in coaching. My growing up, I was in an environment that was often very volatile, often led to, violent or volatile situations, that and communication styles, and outcomes that felt limiting, and it was easy to feel powerless in those situations. But through this workshop, it just all came together to say, wow, it doesn't have to be that way. And I remember being a little kid thinking, well, surely it doesn't have to be this way, right? There must be another way of approaching these things. But as a 7-year-old, you can't really, kind of process all that. But as a 23-year-old, I was like, oh, right, I was right. It doesn't have to be this way, right? There's possibility abounds, possibility is unlimited. So that's kind of the forever changed moment that I thought would be, of interest, perhaps, to set the stage today.
Thank you,
How about
Linda.
you?
Well, first, thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yes.
Because there's a lot in
There's a lot in there.
And I'm curious to know how you actually made the shift. So how did you go from the head knowledge of going, oh yeah, I'm right. You don't have to respond in these limiting ways. There are possibilities. I can actually have more ownership of who I am and the choices I make. How did you actually go from that content to it being a something that changed your life?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the first thing I did after the first day, it was a 2-day workshop. So at the end, as soon as I got home after day one, I, cried for 2 hours. So
Whoa.
and I was like, why am I crying? What's going on? Right. So there was a lot of great reflection that came through that, but it really was through experimentation, because I thought, okay, right. It worked great in the classroom. Right. And I could see possibility, of application of this framework. It gave me a framework and a language to talk about taking responsibility, taking accountability for actions, uh, the power to choose responses versus just kind of automatic, limited reactions, and those kinds of things. And so it really was through experimentation with first in the workplace. That was an easy place to start to, you know, practice some of those because it was a little bit it wasn't as charged, right? But then I started to practice in my personal life in some relationships that had been charged for many years and shift my perspective. And I realized that if I shifted the way I came into that conversation, that person could be the same person that they, demonstrate the same actions and interactions, or it might invite them to show up differently as well in those conversations. So it really was through that spirit of experimentation.
Oh, I love that. Because that's how we get the find out if things
Yeah.
work, isn't it? You can't
Right.
do this stuff in your
Right.
head.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, and it's easy to think it's all out there. Like if they would just do something differently, then, you know, something positive would happen, right? And the realization, the understanding, the practice of actually I get to choose how I show up, and it really doesn't, and they get to choose how they show up, right?
Mm.
Um it's not up to me or up to do it for them. It's not up to them to do it for me, right? It's up to me to just do it for me and then let the chips fall where they may kind of and then decide what to do next, right?
Love that. Thank you for sharing, Linda.
Mm. So, your forever changed moment.
Yeah, when we were talking about this, when we realized that people have small forever change moments that only on reflection um have led to something maybe seismic in terms of change in their life. And I've talked a lot about some of the moments that have caused me to change direction in my life. We mentioned grief and loss. I've moved country as well, and they were significant moments for me. But there was one thing that really stood out for me that I wanted to talk to you about, and that was it was a moment back in 2017 when I had moved from Portugal to Belfast, and I had just set up my own business, and my husband was commuting for work, and it was quite a grueling time in life. Life felt like a bit of a trudge through mud is probably the best way I can describe it. Life was heavy and life was hard, and it felt like it should have been other than that because I had three healthy kids, and on the face of it, life should have felt good, but it just was tough going for lots of reasons, but not one particular reason. And I remember confiding in a friend of mine whom I trust and has been a mentor to me over the years. And they said to me, Lisa, be kind to yourself. And I remember thinking, what a really annoying and stupid thing to say. What does that even mean? Be kind to yourself? Just sounded really selfish and self indulgent. And like, did you even listen to all the things I just said are going on in my life? Be kind to yourself? What even is that? But that phrase, be kind to yourself, stuck with me. And days later, it was still bugging me. And it made me angry. I had all these sorts of emotions in response to it. And it was looking back on it, it was a forever change moment for me because I could not let that phrase go.
Mm.
I wrestled with it and I looked at it from lots of different angles. And then I started to let it seep into my life. What does that mean? What would it look like if I were kinder to myself? What might that release for me in my life? And it started to unravel for me lots of things that I had held really tightly. Expectations I had of myself, like why is my business not moving much faster? Why am I not making connections quicker since I've moved back to Belfast? All these expectations I
Mm.
had on myself that were actually holding me back.
Mm.
I was carrying them and they were heavy. And this "be kind to yourself" phrase completely undid me. And it caused me to go in a different direction. I started to be a bit kinder to myself. I started to, um, I guess, allow myself to mess up,
Mm.
to not have all the answers, to not have it all sewn up, to not have the 5-year plan all mapped
Right.
out with milestones. And in doing that, incredible things started to happen. One, my relationships were better because I stopped projecting all my expectations of others
Mhm.
out there. And I found that I was often disappointed by people because they didn't meet my expectations that they didn't even know I had of them. Um, and all because I started to be kinder to myself. And that was a really good foundation for what was to come next. And I
Yeah.
didn't know what was to come next. But later in 2017, um, my husband John, as I mentioned, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And within a year and a half, I was his carer as he was diagnosed with a terminal form of his cancer. And that "be kind to yourself" is something that really served me so well during that time.
Yeah.
I learned to take better care of myself, and being able to take care of myself enabled me to take care of my children, and it enabled me to take care of John. And at the same time, I was able to still run my business, still grow my business, still coach my clients, and bring that "be kind to yourself" to them as well. And so I started to get asked to talk about my experience as being a caregiver and what I'd learned during that time. And that "be kind to yourself" became a bit of a slogan for me.
Yeah. Love
And so
that.
I started to put it at the bottom of my emails, and it is still the single most significant thing that people that I know comment on who interact with me through
Mm.
email or in client encounters when I say "be kind to yourself." And I see how it unnerves them as well at the start.
Yeah. What do
"Ooh,
you mean?
what do you mean?" And then as they get used to it and they start to lean into it and experience what that means for themselves, I see how it transforms them and their approach to life.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, what's the most recent um, be kind to yourself moment that you've noticed, either for yourself or for others that you've invited?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably realizing that you need time to rest and rejuvenate.
Mm.
I mean, we all need that, and we know there's lots of science on this. Uh, as coaches, sometimes we can we can keep going. We can be very good at asking the questions of the people we work with, but not so good at holding the mirror up to ourselves at
Right.
times. And so, learning to take time for me so that I can be strong and
Mm.
energized and ready to do this work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I committed to earlier this year was working out more with my fitness trainer so that I can not just be strong physically, but I could feel stronger.
Mm.
So that's an
Yeah.
important thing for me to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking as you're sharing that kind of theme song of be kind to yourself. Mine has often and continues to be, well, where does the possibility lie, right? Because barrier after barrier after barrier can present itself, and um, you know, one of those, where does the possibility lie, was in caring for my mom and her husband during a big transition for them from independent living into assisted living and beyond. But because every day I would think, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I and yet I have to, achieve some forward motion in some way, shape, or form. And so that question was always, well, what's possible today? Right? Who might be able to,
Mm,
help me today? What call can I make that, um, or who can I enlist, to answer, to help me answer the next question and the next question and
mm.
the next question and the next question. So that was, one piece that crossed my mind. But also, we were just talking about this earlier today, actually, in that the wonder of possibility. And I feel like we're living that wonder of possibility in coming together for the Forever Change podcast, but also through the lens of those who we'll be speaking with over the next, couple of days and getting our initial, recordings and conversations done. Uh, how lucky are we that we have this, these relationships that we can just say, you know what, we don't really know what's possible and we kind of don't really know where this is going to lead, but would you be willing to sit down and talk with us about this concept and what it might mean to you and things like that? And so I'm feeling a little, I don't know, starstruck, so to speak, and, possibility smitten maybe at this, at this moment, just kind of the opportunity to sit here and get
Yeah,
these
and
conversations started.
I feel the energy of you just even talking about what's possible.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
face lights up when you talk about it, and your body your whole body
Yeah.
language changes,
Yeah.
and
Trying to keep my
that
hands in check. It's like
that creativity, and I know you have got really creative this year,
yeah,
haven't you?
right. Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, I even sent you a little poem a couple of weeks ago, right?
You
As you were
did.
heading out to your time away. Yeah. Yeah. Have been
So you're a poet.
challenged. Yeah, apparently I'm, you know, haiku is my thing. So yeah,
What
which
is
I never even
haiku?
knew. It is a 3-line form of poetry that is syllable based. So the first and third lines hold 5 syllables, and the middle second line holds 7. And so, yes, to your point, I ventured out and had the opportunity to work with a creativity coach for much of the past year. And I thought he was going to help me with this very, you know, this thing that I've been feeling stuck on from a writing standpoint. And we have yet to talk about that, to be perfectly honest. He's like, yeah, before we do that, we really need to, I have no worries about you getting out of, getting that accomplished. He's like, but we need to get you out of your head and into your heart. He's like, you need to,
Mm.
you're too, you're a little out of balance because you're so focused on figuring things out. And he said, I'd really like for you to not try to figure things out and just let things emerge. So, which is kind of, a parallel to what we've certainly experienced the last 2 years and coming to this moment. But yeah, so he's got me writing haiku. I mean, I was an English major, for heaven's sakes. I've never written haiku before, right? So yeah, and then he did it in a timed way. He's like, okay, you have 10 seconds or something.
Wow.
Right, which was, but I did it. I was like, oh, really? And so I'm like, I've never done this before, but I'm going to do it. And he's like, read it back to me. And he's like, you did that in 10 seconds. And I'm like, hey, just give me a challenge and I'll figure it out. And he's like, right, let's stop with the figuring it out, part. But so I've been having a lot of fun kind of experimenting with, there were, I go through phases of just kind of thinking in haiku. I'll be struck by something and I'm like, oh, I must be able to write
So if
about
I
that or
said,
whatever. Oh no,
"Can you
I'm not
do
going to do it in 10
can
seconds
you do a
now.
forever change haiku poem?" You could do that.
I could, but I'm not going to do it right now on camera. Right. I sent you a version of that,
You
right? A
did.
forever changed haiku. But yeah, so that's been a lot of fun.
Maybe we'll
Actually
reveal that at
challenging
another
me.
time.
We might reveal that another time. Yeah. But it's been a great challenge in all, in fairness to him. I like to laugh about it, but it's been a great way of connecting with self and then opening the door to connect with others differently. And I don't think I would have been open to that had you and I not already started down the path or as open to it in the same way. Had you and I not already been down the path of, I don't know, we're going to do something. I don't know, this forever change thing really, really resonated with us. And so we're going to do something with it. We don't know what it is yet. And to just kind of over time let that emerge. And then thinking, well, are we the only ones who are going to find this interesting? And then reaching out to, some of our friends and colleagues and saying, hey, would you guys be, willing to dive into this concept with us and be guests in a pilot series? And they're like, okay, so what is it? And we gave them the concept, and without exception, they're like, oh yeah, totally. I already know what I'm going to talk about, right? And I thought, wow, okay, there
Yeah,
is something to this.
that's been really exciting to read
Yeah,
people's thoughts and the conversations they want to have.
yeah.
There's some great topics that we've got coming up.
No, I think we're going to really push the envelope on creating space for connection, human connection at a depth that we're not always willing to spend the time. We don't give ourselves the gift of the time
No.
to dive that deeply, right?
I'm really excited to hear people's stories. I'm from a family of storytellers.
Yeah.
My dad was a storyteller that, would put his hand behind the door and knock on it, and you would definitely think that, it was live happening and full Dolby surround sound, and you were all there with your imagination. I think we meet people all the time. As you said, Linda, sometimes it's just transactional. It's like, can you help me get to the next thing that I need to get to? But when you stop and really listen and spend time with people, they've had the most incredible journeys. And I don't just mean influencers and people who are storytellers for their profession. I mean, just ordinary, everyday people have these extraordinary moments in their lives that really cause them to test their resilience, or to could have taken them into victimhood and kept them stuck there. And yet, through adversity or through challenge or through possibility, have have got something out of that. And
Yeah.
I suppose for me, with our listeners, what I really hope they get out of it is inspired to
Mm,
look at their own story, look at how they've got to where they are, and extract the learning from that, and to really be inspired to share that
mm,
with others, because there's no doubt when you hear those human stories and what people have navigated throughout their lives, that it encourages other people.
yeah.
And I know that because of some of the stories that I've shared from my life. I so frequently get people texting me, direct messaging me and saying, look, you don't even know that I follow you, but I've been seeing what you've been posting on LinkedIn for the past 2
Yeah.
years. And I just want to let you know that because you shared that, this happened or that happened.
Yeah.
And I think that is powerful. It's what you say. It's almost like we have a responsibility
Mm,
to shine a light on
yeah.
these stories and these human experiences that are real and true and can encourage and inspire people.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, we're just in a moment of our own, kind of collective um, story that there's just so much negativity in our faces kind of all the time, whether it's through, through stories uh, that that people are telling about other people, right? They're not telling their own story, and it can be really sometimes toxic, and I think just creating space for stories that are inspiring is, why wouldn't we
Mm,
pursue an opportunity
yeah.
to do that?
And one of the other lovely things I think is Adam Grant talks a lot about this in his book Rethinking, and challenging us as humans um, to move beyond our deeply held beliefs without question. You know, that maybe hearing other people's stories on this Forever Change podcast will help people think about things from a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe explore some of their own judgments or deeply held limiting beliefs, and maybe go and try something.
Yeah.
Do something different, or connect with someone in a different way. Maybe even this podcast could be someone's forever changed moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my hope.
Let's do it.